7, the massacre at Hawkins' lab. So obviously at the end of the last episode, we're presented with Steve in a little bit of peril. So the bats are, like absolutely wrecking him. I don't know if I like this scene or not, but the rest of the crew come in and they've got oars and they're swinging. I'm not sure if it's cool or it's ridiculous in terms of them just handling these bats. And Steve Osborne's the bat and bites his head off and starts slinging it around. It was a lot happening. I don't know if it was cheesy or if it was cool, but all in all, it is fitting the tone that they've set throughout all the other episodes. So, yeah. Our US Army captain, I'm not sure what his angle is, but he's got the FBI agent that was safeguarding the kids, and he's put him in a hot box, and he's looking for Elle as well. It's never really fleshed out or explored about why he wants it as well. I thought he was working with the other guy, but it turns out I think they've got some different motives going on, and I guess we'll find out later on maybe what the army captain wants. But the whole torture scene, I don't really think that's necessary. I think they're just adding a little bit more complexity in than they need to. If they didn't have the army captain at all, it probably it wouldn't affect the overall storyline at this point in time. With our gang in the actual Underdark, so they're in there. So I did like seeing them in the Underdark. It was a cool change of pace that they're actually in this peril. But as they're running away from the bats, they just run into the woods, where I'm surely the bats would be able to swarm, so there'll all be bats coming along. But once they run in, they're able to hide under a rock, and the bats are like, nah, I can't see you, we're off. Where they're meant to be in a hive mind, and Steve and Nancy are just giving the information to Eddie and Robin, who are just I know that I wanted them to feel overwhelmed by the amount of information. They're in a different realm, they're in the Underdark, to the point where they're just yeah, no worries, we kind of just accept it. But they're don't step on the vine, because they're a hive mind. But the hive mind throughout, they're on a number of different tasks, but the hive minds are they're not on the roads or anywhere they need to travel, where they can just travel freely. Wouldn't if you're a hive mind, make it hard for people in terms of putting your vines everywhere or having bats everywhere? But as Nancy's I got guns at my house, so that's convenient. And they just get free travel. There's just nice free, no vines anywhere, but a bat does see them later on. So I guess they finally do have an alarm system. I feel like you would have had that hive mind set up in terms of being able to see everything, but alas, you don't. So I don't know. What are you doing, writers? Nancy makes obviously the big discovery, and they're trying to communicate back real world when they're using their lights. Surely they set up this obviously Morse code, which makes sense on how you communicate, but then they're doing this writing thing. Wouldn't you just write smaller? Because she seems to be doing quite large letters, but if she did a smaller letter, they'd actually be able to write the whole word rather than going a couple of letters at the same time. I don't know, that would have made sense for me. If I could write, in font size 10 rather than font size 30, I'd be able to fit it all on the screen. I don't know, that's just me. I would have thought about writing smaller, but yeah. And I really did like how they started to communicate with the real world and the frozen time that is in the Underdark, and where they pop the Dustin conveniently works out everything. Everything they find is just really convenient. All of a sudden one of the characters knows exactly what it is, and they're able to solve the mystery, which it's always been convenient. Someone always does sort of know what's going on, which I would like them to kind of work out as they go. But yeah, I guess they are using it to push the plot along. But I do like how there's gates at every different point. So every murder site there's a new gate, and I did like to see their flipping in terms of how they climb up. If they didn't have upper body strength, they've got a sheet up in the trailer where Chrissy was murdered, And the flip, like I like the camera transitions, they're really cool to see, like being able to go from the Underdark to the present world. But if you didn't have upper body strength, I don't know how you're going to climb up that, because like climbing up a rope is not overly easy. I know it's a sheet with the knots in it, so you can use a bit more of the footing, but yeah, but I guess good luck climbing. He's obviously got a little bit of things going on, and old mate is having a nice little mind game with her. But as this is all going on, like, so they're flipping between storylines, which is cool to see, but there are times where I just want to see that one storyline play out and then go back, but I know they want to play that in like chronological order. Where I did like Elle's, reckoning, or not reckoning, but like awakening, so she actually gets to see the memories that her brain is trying to block. So I find like Popper is just kind of making up things as he goes, so like he doesn't really seem to have a grasp on anything. He just seems to be like, she'll work it out, or you want to progress, so he like puts the final tape in. And this is where we get to learn all about her powers and sort of what's going on, what happened in that massacre scene. So my theory was that she was actually trying to protect, which wasn't quite right, but this is where the young bloke we actually get to learn is really helping Elle, and gives her like one of the key cards. And I did like the symbolism, because obviously Tu and his little gang are out for vengeance for Elle, because they're bullying her, and she doesn't actually give them up, so she doesn't like snitch on them. But essentially Tu gets the shock collar because Elle suffers a concussion, and he sort of apparently is building them up anyway, so he wants Elle to be able to develop more powers. This is what's being fed to her anyway, and she tries to do the escape, which we learn that old mate is the young bloke is actually one. So Elle wants to, because he's being nice to her, she wants to help him out and takes the tracker out, and all of a sudden we learn very cool reveal in terms of his powers. So he's like pretty boss with his powers. He's breaking necks and he's flipping people everywhere. Like, I didn't see it till later on that he was going to be one, but when it actually sort of got to it, before he actually used his powers, like, you're one. But well, I actually noticed he was one when he did his like mind tracking reveal. So I would like to know a little bit more of one storyline. I hope they sort of give that backstory in terms of how Popper was able to stop him using his powers with his little device, and like what the little device does. But probably won't. But we actually get to learn that one is actually Vecna. So I like his backstory, how all the things that were happening in Victor's home was actually the son. So the son, he was just a little bit of a deranged kid. Yeah, he was a deranged kid. So they moved in the house, and he's like, I don't know how he discovered where these black widows were, like the spiders, but he's putting his hands in there, and he's like, black widows are God. Like, whatever, dude. I would have liked a little bit more why he was like that. It just sort of was convenient in terms of them going, oh, you don't really fit in, and you're more like a recluse with the Black Widow. But like, we can see him sort of experimenting with the rabbits and stuff, and his mum apparently, like, she knew that he was one of the people, and he just like kills her and sets up his father, and then he ends up in one of the homes. So that's where Popper gets to him, and then he starts to try and rebuild those people. Like, I'd like to know how Popper was able to realize these kids have powers and set up his facility. Like, that'd be cool to know. Like, there's no real backstory yet in terms of how they set them up. Between all of them, and the actual face-off was pretty cool. Like, the mental battle between Elle and One was, I did enjoy it, and I like to see that. Well, I did like the battle, but I didn't like how it was really convenient that he was like using memory. And I don't know why they choose the memory of Elle being born, like the baby crying. Like, come on, just use about the mother, or like use another scene with the mother that's not you being born. Like, come on guys, you're not going to remember when you're being born, but whatever, it is what it is. But the whole part where she just like absolutely wrecks it, and even though she lands in a superhero landing, like, yeah, okay, but when she actually full uses her power, you can see it's like obviously a big strain of the body. She's bleeding from eyes and her nose, and turns Vecna into what is the gate. I did like that transition, that loop into what's all happening in terms of him being changed by the Underdark, and creating the gate has caused him into being Vecna. That was cool. That was a really cool scene. I did like that, and I'd like to see where that's going to go. Joyce and Murray have stopped Yuri, so they've landed the plane conveniently. They just had to pull up and flick some random switches, where this whole part seems just too comical for it to actually be believable. So they've switched, so Murray's going to be Yuri, and they've, you know, like gagged him up, and they're just randomly going to walk into a prison. So like the whole point where they actually get to the prison and he gives the passport, and it's like a picture of him glued into the passport. It just reminded me of Bench Warmers, where it's like, I am 11, like the guy that's trying to pose as a child to play in that baseball tournament. That's what that whole scene felt like. I had problems with it. I'm not sure if it was just meant to be a comical aspect or not, but it just felt cheesy, that whole part. And then they just walk in. Like, I know they're meeting the warden, but Murray they need to tone Murray down. Like, Murray is just ridiculous. Like, he's practicing his greetings with the gun. Like, just come on, we don't need it. I know it was funny, like I did laugh, but it's kind of, at the same time, I do just want to move forward with the story rather than seeing your outlandish performance. He passes as Yuri, so he can pass as a Russian. And that's been the whole build up anyway. They've been foreshadowing him actually being a Russian because he can speak Russian. So yeah, handy to have. But when they actually get to see Hopper and he's fighting a Demigorgon, obviously this is when it all kicks off. So Hopper with his lighter conveniently doesn't light until right at the end. So, you know, got to build tension somehow. And they're waving at the Demigorgon. This is when Murray and that are, you know, like taking the warden off to open the gates. But like, I don't know how Murray's able to beat these trained soldiers. Like, surely they do like some hand-to-hand combat or some like combat training to be in the Russian army. Like, I feel like there should be like a bare minimum entry training, and that should be like at least some basic training on hand-to-hand combat. But, you know, his community classes are wrecking people. And then the random luck of the draw of like flicking buttons. Like, surely when the doors are open, the rest of the guards have gone, oh no, like surely something's wrong. Wouldn't they be circling around to like stop Hopper? But I guess we'll see. We didn't actually get to see them escape, but we did get to see, you know, Joyce and Hopper's reunion, which was building up. Obviously we've had that emotional connection. We know that they're starting to realise that they actually have feelings for each other, and I feel like this is an extreme way for Hopper to actually, you know, develop that emotional connection with Joyce after all that time. Like, surely there was an easier way to do it rather than being like taken by Russian soldiers. But yeah, that whole scene was just a little bit outlandish. Like, surely the soldiers should know that something's going on. Like, normally no one gets out of the pit with the Demigorgon, but whatever. Yeah, it is what it is. And yeah, so let me know what you thought. Good. I did enjoy that episode. So it wasn't the strongest episode in the actual part one, but the first four were fantastic. This one was good. I did like how it did tie in majority of the things, and I know the 1st of July we're actually going to get to see the end of season. Well, we're going to get part 2, so we're going to see the end of it, which is nice to see. Apparently it has been renewed for season 5, so we'll get to see that as well. And yeah, you know what to do. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends.